from this side of the computer screen, I'll say. And hopefully we'll get this set up and get it running here shortly. There we go. Can you hear me okay, Margie?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, Minnetta.
Okay, thanks a lot. Anyway, thanks. This is, again, Minnetta Gardinier from the frozen tundra of Iowa City with snow on the ground here. And I am a member of the Iowa chapter of the 99s. I'm also governor of the North Central section just recently. And I've been a director on the Air Race Classic board for about the last 2 years, year and a half. So just to give you a little background on myself, I've only had my private pilot certificate for not yet 10 years. So I started, I got that in 2005. I just started flying in 2003. I have my instrument rating from 2006. And right now I'm pushing towards 1,500 hours of flying time. And many of those hours I have thanks to flying the Air Race Classic 7 times. I started the Air Race Classic in 2008, and I have to say I've become a bit of an addict, and now I look forward to that race every year. It's kind of my fly camp. And as I've built time over these 7 races, I can now say I've landed in 42 of the lower 48 states, which is really a lot of fun. I tell everybody now Alaska is my bucket state. In this picture, it's the team that I flew, me and Linda Moody from New Hampshire, and we flew 2 races together, and our team name was the Wild Women of the Wind. So what I'd like to do is to spend a little time, if I can get the slides to move forward here. There we go. I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes just to give you a little bit of a taste of history for women's air racing. As probably everybody out there knows, the Women's Air Derby was first flown in 1929, and this great picture here shows 3 of the racers, 3 of the 21 racers that year. And I think what it captures for me in this picture is really the camaraderie and the friendship that was between these racers. And the route that they flew from Santa Monica, California to Cleveland, Ohio is shown in the map. And in 2010, I had a great honor to basically attend the premiere of Breaking Through the Clouds, which is a great documentary on this first Air Race Classic. And I just think back on that, it's a bit humbling to think that I'm one among this lineage of women aviators who's been flying, or who's been racing since that first race in 1929. And then in 1948, the Women's Air Derby evolved to become the all-women transcontinental air race. And that was flown, it's also referred to as AUTAR, and oftentimes called Powder Puff Derby, but was flown from 48 to 1977, so not quite 30 years that race existed. And these pictures here, again, it captures a photo of 8 pilots who were getting ready to launch from Palm Springs back in that first AUTAR race in 1948. And then our own 99's Fran Barra, who won the AUTAR 7 times. And as you can see, this has an amazing record in terms of her various certificates and experience flying. And now we come to the Air Race Classic. So I put a little bit of a timeline here just to sort of summarize that. But the Air Race Classic picked up where AUTAR left off in 1977, and it's been racing since then every year. And we're looking forward to 2015 this next year. And the route we'll show in a little bit, but this is the 2014 route that you're looking at, the race that we just finished, and that was our 38th annual Air Race Classic. And the ARC is the longest running cross-country air race at this point. And what I did in terms of putting this talk together, I actually kind of did some back-of-the-envelope calculations, and I would estimate that we have had 380 plus airports that we've done starts and termini and en route stops at. We've had over 3,000 women pilots, co-pilots, and crew members that have flown the race now. And our routes change every year, and they crisscross the U.S. And my best guess is we've probably flown over 80,000 nautical miles. As I say, we're 38 years and growing stronger as a race organization. So I hope some of you out there are interested in thinking about how to participate in the Air Race Classic. And what I'd like to do is to get just a little bit of an idea of who's out there, who's in the audience, and kind of what your race background is. So what I've done is I've prepared 3 short survey slides. And this first one is who has participated in the Air Race Classic or air racing. And I've given you 4 options to select as to how you would characterize yourself. So what I'd like to do is to launch the survey, and you'll now have a little bit of time to go ahead and select your responses to that. And once I feel like we've got everybody's votes in, we're going to go ahead and close the survey. But go ahead and keep responding. We've still got a few more to come in, but it'll give me a little bit of an idea of who's out there. This picture that I've shown here, what I've tried to do through these slides as we go through the talk is I've taken really some of my photographs that I've taken over the years and a few others, and just to give you a little bit of a flavor, this is Margaret Wint and Janice Welsh flying Margaret's Cardinal back in the 2012 race. And they were called the Michiana Redbirds from Michigan and Indiana. And they were basically just finishing their race, the flyby to land at Sporties that year. So I think we were getting pretty close to having everybody's votes. And I think we'll go ahead and close this poll now. And just to give you an idea of what we found out from that poll is almost 60%. No, actually, I got to share that, and I can actually show you the data. So we have almost 60% of our listeners out there have not flown an air race, but they're interested. And about a quarter of you have helped at an Air Race Classic stop, I should say. And about a third have flown the air race. And we've got 4 people who flew the Autar race, which is really cool. So we're going to go on to our next survey question. Let's move this forward. What I'd like to do is to learn a little bit about your flying. So let me go in here and pick our next poll question. Let's hide that. There we go. We're on to our next question. So this next one is to tell me a little bit about your flying. And are you a student pilot? Are you a VFR-only private pilot? Or do you have a current instrument rating? So you can go ahead, I'll launch that, and we'll let you log in with your responses on that. You guys are much faster on this one. And this slide that I've got here is actually a picture from the 2014 race. And this is the first of the 7 races that I've flown, and I did not get to complete the course. It was a really challenging year with the weather. And we have 2 planes, and they just happen to be each Musketeers or Sundowner. They look like little twins, tail to tail. But the half-fast slowdowners was me and Sue Jones, and the 3 Musketeers, Janora Jessen, Patty Mitchell, and B.J. Carter. And we had to make an off-route stop, and it was at Bear Lake County in Idaho for weather. So exciting times this year on the route. So let's go ahead and close that poll, and we'll share the responses with you. So we have about 4% we've got a few people out there who are student pilots. About a third of you are VFR-only private pilots, and about 65% with a current instrument rating. So, and I'm going to use this information to talk about some of the requirements for flying the race. So we're going to go ahead and close that, and we're going to go back now to the third question that I have for you is, move this forward. There we go. And the last question that I have is just tell me a little bit more about your flying, whether you have either less than or more than 500 hours PIC time. So I'll go ahead and launch that. And again, while you're completing those responses, again, just another shot. This was from the 2013 race, and this was the ramp at Pasco, Washington on launch morning. And so people are out in their planes, stowing their gear and getting ready to take off. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this, and we've got a 50-50 split on this, so that's pretty perfect. So we'll share that. We've got, again, 50% have less than 500 hours, and 50% have more than 500 hours. So that's about as evenly split as you can get on that. So we're going to go ahead and close this poll, and we're going to go back to our slides. So I thank you for that information. And what I'll do is go ahead and move forward. And I'll tell you a little bit about my background for flying. So in 2008, I received an issue of the 99 News in my mailbox. And as I was reading through the 99 News, flipped to the back cover. And mind you, I'd only been a member of the 99s for probably just over a year at that time, because it was either coming in the end of 2007 or the beginning of 2008, and I had really just joined the 99s. And on the back cover was this route. This was the 2008 route, starting in Bozeman, Montana, and going over to Mansfield, Massachusetts, a south suburb of Boston. And I had never heard of the Air Race Classic, and I read the advertisement, the information on it, and basically I was pretty intrigued with it, but I was also intimidated by it. I had only started learning to fly in 2003, and I had just got my private pilot certificate in 2005, so maybe just barely a couple of years before, 2.5 years maybe. The other thing is I live in Iowa City, and as many of you know, the land around here is kind of flat. We have rolling hills, but nonetheless there were mountains between Iowa City and Bozeman. The Air Race Classic requires that there be both a pilot and a co-pilot in every plane. So I didn't know that many women pilots at the time. So, how is it going to find a co-pilot for this? And then lastly, it was a race. And, I flew a Cardinal for basically hobby, pleasure, a few times to work. But racing is for racers. And so, again, I was just kind of looking at this intrigued but intimidated. And here's how I convinced myself. I have a habit of leaving things on my coffee table, and this back of this magazine stared at me for several weeks. But I started to think about my flying more, and I had flown almost 450 hours by that time. I actually had my instrument rating, so based on what I was reading, it looked like I could qualify as an ARC pilot. It was also a daytime VFR race. So fair weather flying, good weather, daytime hours, daylight, certainly doable. And then I started to look at the different legs of the race route, both for 2008, and what I'm showing here now is 2009. So as we go through these slides, I'm going to show you the different race routes too. If you look at those legs, between each of the cities listed there. Each leg is a basic cross-country flight, 2.5 hours. And that was not uncommon for me to take cross-country flights at that point in time. So I thought, hey, this is beginning to look feasible. And I also had an airplane. So shown in this picture is my Cessna Cardinal. It has the Wild Women of the Wind decal there on the door from the 2008 race. And just as a little aside, the gals in this picture are some volunteers from Bozeman. And the little girl on the left was somebody whom I took for a taxi. I taxied her around the field when I was leaving my plane. And you would have thought I had just given her the greatest Christmas present going. She was just smiling ear to ear as I asked her to make sure that my wingtips didn't touch any of those other race planes. And she was thrilled to be my co-pilot on that. But anyway, as I thought about it, I thought, yeah, I could do this. I just had to find a race partner. And that was kind of how things began for my first race. So let me give you just a little bit of background in terms of the minimum requirements. So for the Air Race Classic, again, as I mentioned, there has to be a pilot and a co-pilot for every team. And the minimum requirement is that both the pilot and the co-pilot have to have a private pilot's license. They also have to have a current medical. and they have to be current proficiency with a biennial flight review. And then one of them, not both, but one of them has to have 500 hours of PIC time or a current instrument rating. So in that 2008 race, I qualified in that category with my current instrument rating. I did not yet have 500 hours, but I had a current instrument rating. So that was how I qualified. My co-pilot, Linda Moody, had about 250 hours of flying. She was working on her instrument rating, or thinking about it, I think, at the time. But she did not, have either the 500 hours or the current instrument rating. But she qualified as the co-pilot based on the private pilot's license and having a current medical and a BFR. And then lastly, the other thing that I'll bring to your attention is that you can also choose, the team can choose to have a third crew member to carry a third crew member on board. And that just can help with logistically, with sort of distribution of labor. And I will say in recent years, I think last year, I think about a third of the teams were three-member teams. And the minimum requirement for the crew member is that she must be a student pilot with a current medical, or she could have a pilot certificate but not have a current medical. So there are a couple of options there. And then, of course, she could have many higher qualifications, but the minimum requirements are the student pilot with a current medical or a pilot certificate who lacks the medical. And in this picture, what I've shown here are the Baldwin family flyers. Lydia on the left, Kara in the middle, and Caroline Baldwin. This is a picture from 2014. And I think they've flown virtually all the races, or a good number of the races that I've participated in since 2008, and I always look forward to seeing them. And the fun part of it is that Kara, the young girl in the middle, when she first was flying this race, she was a student pilot as a crew member, and it's been great fun to see her evolve as a pilot. She now has her private pilot's license, and she's now a student at Embry-Riddle. So it's been great fun, sort of flying with the Baldwin family. First-time racers. Everybody is a first-time racer at some point when they participate in this race. And this is a great photograph of the group of first-time racers from 2014. There are two pilots on the far left. I think you can see my mouse. The far left is Gretchen John, another director in the Air Race Classic Board, and Michelle Bassanesi, her partner. But the two of them, I think, organized the seminar for first-time racers. But about a third to half of our racers every year are flying the race for the first time. So a lot of opportunities there for new first-time racers every year with the race, and it's just it's just a really exciting group of people. And I can still remember my experiences in 2008 as a first-time racer, and as well my race partner Linda Moody was a first-time racer that year too. Collegiate teams. Another thing to be aware of is that a number of teams enter the race who have affiliations with colleges. And what I've shown on the right-hand side here is just, I looked back through the last 5 years, and these are universities that have had representation over the last 4 or 5 years flying the race. There's some teams that are there every year and some that sort of come and go in the race. And it's just a great group of gals to get to know on the race every year. They're highly competitive amongst the collegiate teams as to who's going to win the collegiate trophy. And to give you a little background on that, all members of the collegiate team have to be closely affiliated with the university that they represent. The team pilot has to be a registered undergraduate student at the university, and then the other co-pilot and or the crew member can have other affiliations. They don't all have to be students. About a quarter to a third of the teams every year are representing various colleges and universities. And if you're interested in more details on that, there's an email address that you can go to learn more about collegiate teams. Airplanes. Everybody's got to have an airplane. And you can see this picture that's shown here. This is actually a shot of the ramp at Lake Havasu from 2012. And what I've done again is sort of just look down through the list of planes over the last 4 or 5 years in the race, and I've just kind of listed off the different types of planes that fly the race. And you know, so there's always a good group of planes out there flying. And to give you an idea, some of the rules and regulations for the airplanes at this point with the race is that they're either stock or ARC approved modified stock airplanes from any production year. They have been certified to fly in normal or utility category. The engines, the piston engines, are non-turbocharged or non-supercharged, and they have to be somewhere between 125 to 600 horsepower in terms of their power that they have. They also have to be rated for continuous operation at maximum engine speed. So yes, we do fly the race, basically throttle to the max and trying to get your max speed out of your plane. And then just as a side note, I wanted to make sure everybody knew that if your plane doesn't meet the above requirements, or if you chose that you weren't comfortable flying a first race, you know, in race mode per se, you can still fly the race and you can register in non-competition categories. So that's, I think, an important thing to know. And then also with regards to the airplanes, every plane gets a handicap speed assigned to it, and every plane gets inspected. So what's shown in the upper left-hand corner is a track of a flight that was taken to determine the handicap speed for a plane. So you'll see the yellow line where the plane came out, flew out over the water, and you'll see a square box. And I kind of refer to that as flying the box, and that's that box that's used to calculate the cruise speed of the plane in race configuration. So basically, you're given an assigned pressure altitude to climb to on a calm wind day. So really the winds should be calm, less than, I think, 10 knots. And the plane, what you'll do is you'll fly the 4 cardinal points of the compass and make these right angle turns. And you'll fly about 5 minutes on each of those legs. And during that time, you've got a handicap pilot in the right seat recording data, as well as tracker units in the plane recording your track. And all of the data gets sent into the handicap team. And they basically, that allows them to correct for any winds and to come up with a cruise speed, a handicap speed for your plane. And winning the Air Race Classic is all about beating your handicap speed. So the winner of the race is not necessarily the first plane across the finish line at the terminus. You could be the last plane crossing that line and still win the race or be in the top 10. But it's all about beating your handicap speed and getting that sustained speed above your handicap and choosing the conditions and the weather and the time of day to fly to make that happen. And then your aircraft and your logbooks get inspected at the start for all the aircraft. And at the terminus, the top 15 planes are then re-inspected. And the picture down in the lower right shows Laura Gardy, who's the Air Race Classic president right now, and Gail Rauscher, who's a member of AWAM, which is the Association for Women in Aviation Maintenance. And we've had the benefit over the last couple of years with a great partnership with AWAM, and they are leading our Air Race Classic volunteer inspection teams at the start and terminus. And so that's how your planes are sort of calculated in terms of their handicap speed and flying rates. And launch morning, a couple of photographs showing the ramp, Lake Havasu in 2012, and the plane launching off of, yeah, I think that's a plane launching out of Concord in 2014, just taking off on that launch morning. So I have to say that when I go to bed on the night before the launch, it's kind of like Christmas Eve. That's the feeling. Everybody's really ready to go. They're ready for this race. And they've got their nerves, and they're a bit anxious too, especially the first-timers. But launch morning is just a fun time. Everybody goes to breakfast briefing. It's kind of that last weather check briefing with the racers. Once they're released, everybody's racing to their planes, taking their luggage, packing the planes, getting ready to start. Everybody's kind of hugging, saying bye, see you at the next stop, see you at the terminus. All the planes, they start up in race order, so about groups of 5 planes, they get the signal to start their engines. And it's just really fabulous to see 50 planes or 55 planes taxiing out. And they're all going to launch off of that start about 1 to 2 minutes apart. And I can tell you the first flyby stop or two, it's really crowded, really exciting time. And then planes kind of start to string out along the route. But it's really a fun time.
Minnetta, I have a question here from Sophie that addresses something you mentioned a bit earlier, and she asks, what does it mean for the engine to be qualified to operate at continuous speed?
Oh, what that means is, let's back up. So that's the slide about the airplane. So it means that the aircraft has to be rated to be able to fly in continuous operation at maximum engine speed, so full throttle basically. So you should be able to fly the aircraft with your throttle pushed full forward and at max power for a continuous period of time. I'm not as familiar with the LSA planes, but for instance, I believe the LSAs are generally not rated for this continuous operation at maximum engine speed. So that's the best explanation I could give right now. And then if you wanted more details, you can email at airplane. So the email address is airplane@airraceclassic.org.
Thank you, Minnetta.
Okay. So flybys. This is probably hands down the most exciting time in the race. So in between those cross-country legs, you'll see those towns. Let's back up a slide. So the 2010 route started in Fort Myers, Florida. We had a flyby stop at each of the cities on the route: Waycross, Tuscaloosa, Hot Springs, etc. So when you come to those flyby points, you have 2 options. And you can flyby to continue, which means you've got enough fuel to go on to the next stop without landing for fuel. And the other option is flyby to land. And most of the planes typically land if they can bypass the first stop and get out ahead of the pack. Some planes do that. For myself, my own Cardinal, basically I'm landing at every stop to take on fuel. And once you get going, basically when you're taking on, I guess I'll back up. When you leave the start, every plane leaves with full fuel. And then once you get in beyond that, when you land, it's your option to take on the amount of fuel that you need for the next leg. So if you're trying to control the amount of weight you're carrying in the plane, you're probably not going to fill your fuel tanks in between, but you're going to calculate the amount of fuel you need to take on the next leg safely and following FAA standards. So the other piece to it is for these flybys is the Air Race Classic receives or applies for these FAA waivers, which allows us to do the flybys at every airport. So it's important to follow the FAA waivers. Needless to say, it's important to fly safely. And the flybys, basically what you see is if you look at the blue line, it's running parallel to one of the runways here. You follow that blue line, and the instructions are to fly at 200 feet above ground down the entire length of the runway before you continue or land. And once you pass the timing line, your time is noted and you're off the clock if you're going to land. And so you can circle out, cool down your engines, come back into the normal flow of pattern in that airport and land, take on fuel, get a drink, bathroom break, get some lunch, whatever. And it may be the end of the night or the end of the day, and you'll be spending the night there. So again, you're flying fast and low. You're at your maximum speed, 200 feet above the ground, and it's a very exciting thing to do. And occasionally there's a dual flyby where you might have two planes flying parallel to one another on that flyby. You're going to be flying with other fast and low ARC planes in the area perhaps. And needless to say, there may be other non-ARC planes in the pattern, and so you need to, needless to say, you want to be watching out for other aircraft. And when you're coming back into land, again, you're just another aircraft in the pattern. At that point, you're off the clock. When you go to take off to the next leg, you'll do that same thing. You'll circle out, you'll come back in and do that flyby. And when you pass the timing line, taking off, you're going to go back on the clock and to make that next leg. So that's a little bit of information on the flybys. One thing that I found on YouTube is a great little video, and I put in the address for it here. We thought about showing a video, but with people's computers buffering and that sort of thing, we decided, or I decided not to put the video in here. But if you're interested in looking at a flyby, this is a great link. It's taken from a stop in Ada, Oklahoma in 2006. And it shows, you get to hear some of the racers talk when they land, but it's a great little video to see the racers, but also has a couple of shots of flybys. So I encourage you to go out and have a look at that. So the other thing that's important is to fly your own race. It's a 4-day race. Basically, you have 4 days to get from the start to the terminus. Depending on the route, there may be 8 to 10 flybys. In general, it's about 9 flybys these days. Again, daytime VFR, so you can't take off before sunset, and you need to be on the ground by, you can't take off before sunrise, and you need to be on the ground by sunset. In fact, this picture that's shown in the lower right is a picture of my team flying the timing line right before sunset at Holdridge, Nebraska. So as we were coming in, we were watching the GPS, the estimated time of arrival the whole way in there. And as we touched down, we were snapping pictures to, we needed any evidence that the sun was still above the horizon when we landed in Holdridge back in 2013. But there's all kinds of weather. You've got to fly your own race. You will have weather along the route in some fashion. The picture in the upper left is actually just a start weekend in Fort Myers. The picture below that, underneath the words of fly your own race. In 2011, actually, we had some prolonged IFR weather that actually blew away the start in Iowa City. They canceled the first 4 stops, and all the planes had to relocate to Alliance, Nebraska. And my co-pilot and I, we didn't have to start the race until the next day at noon, and my co-pilot and I, we were both instrument rated, and we decided that before we started the race, we went up and flew the other stops anyway. And the picture through the clouds in the lower left-hand corner there is our shot, I believe, flying across South Dakota at the time. So again, you know, when you're in the race, when you're actually flying the race, you wouldn't have a picture like that because you'd be out of the clouds and in blue sky. But again, you'll be on the ground looking at clouds sometimes with the race. So daytime VFR, know your airspace. Those routes take you through a lot of different airspace, and it's a really great refresher course. I actually call this my VFR refresher course because normally I fly on instruments throughout the year, and this is a great time for me to remind myself about the VFR rules and strategize. So you need to really think about what the weather is, the time of day when you're flying, what the weather is going to be, and try to make the best use of your 4 days to get your best speeds as you fly the race. And the other thing is I can't say enough about the volunteers. Every one of these stops has a small army of volunteers there to welcome the racers, to make their stay memorable, to make their stay comfortable, to help you get on to the next stop. So the volunteers are what make each race and every stop unique. I've got a little picture here of the timers from the Centennial at the start in 2010. And the picture below is in a little town of Cameron, Missouri. They did not have a fuel truck there, so what you see is a little wagon train line of the airplanes coming up to be fueled. And the hangar in the background was full of townspeople who were offering lunch to the racers. You just walked up to a table and somebody asked you what kind of a sandwich you wanted, and they made the sandwich right there on the spot for you. And, you know, the smallest towns sometimes are the best stops. And, you know, when you least expect it, you're going to have just a grand time in some of these towns. The Air Race Classic racers, every year we vote for the best en-route stop. So there's a little bit of competition now between the en-route stops to get that award. So I've pretty much run through most things. What I wanted to do is to just give you a little bit of a checklist. The route that you're seeing in the background is next year's 2015 route, starting up in Fredericksburg, Virginia, going down to Fairhope, Alabama. So the one thing is I'll plead my case for hopefully some of you to volunteer at some of the Air Race Classic stops if you're not flying the race. And the checklist for doing that is to identify your airport, identify what you might like to do at the airport, and some of the things that we need are timers. It is not rocket science to do the timing. So we're always looking for timers, and that's really exciting. Basically, you got a ringside seat to all these flybys. We look for people to welcome the racers, a little bit of hospitality when they get on the ground. We look for drivers to give racers a lift between the airport and the hotels when they're spending nights. Sometimes volunteers will help out as line crew, maybe helping organize the fuel lines, helping people, you know, when they're taxiing their planes into position, and just helping carry their stuff from the plane into the FBO. Inspections, actually. At the start and the terminus, we need inspection teams. AWAM sort of leads the effort, but they're always looking for either flight or aviation programs, maybe A&P programs, but also just EAA chapters, people who are knowledgeable about a plane, you know, basically can help take cowling off. For these volunteers doing inspections, we just need people who are a little bit knowledgeable about airplanes and comfortable around them. But they'll also work with IAs or AMPs who are leading each of the inspection teams. And again, those inspection teams primarily at the start, and then a few teams at the terminus. Fundraising, if you're at a start or a terminus location, you know, the host organizers are also interested in finding volunteers who might help them fundraise to support all the events at the start and terminus weekends. So if you're interested in this and volunteering, you can contact Route at airraceclassic.org. And again, save the dates. The race dates next year are June 22nd to 25th, and the start weekend prior to the 22nd, and the terminus weekend following the 25th down in Fairhope. And then for those of you who are interested in racing, here's kind of a little bit of a checklist for racers. Get your race kit, and this year the new thing is the race kits are free. They'll be available in about a week, I think. Around mid-November, the 17th of November, I think they're going to be released and available online for download, and again, they'll be free. Start putting your race team together. Who's the pilot? Who's got the 500 hours PIC or the instrument rating? Who's going to be the co-pilot? Are you going to include a third crew member? Talk about the cost, the responsibilities of how you're going to put that together. Communication on the team is just paramount to having a successful race experience. And again, my rule is for the Air Race Classic with my team is we're going to have fun. We're going to be talking to each other at the end of the race. I fly the race to do the best I can, fly my best cross country. I don't really fly the race to win the prizes. But there's a lot of competitive racers out there, and that's why they're flying the race. And, you know, they're just different ways to fly the race, but you want to fly your race and have a great time doing it. Once you get your race team together, you'll want to identify your airplane. If you have a plane, you might rent a plane. You might negotiate with people to, use a plane that you can use for the race. Again, identify your aircraft and then get familiar with your aircraft. Register for the race. The kits will be available in about a week. The registration for the race does not open until January 2nd, and you'll have until April 1st to register. There's a limit of 55 planes in the race. So when the 55 planes are registered, 55 teams are registered, then they'll suspend, or once the 55 teams are registered, then what they'll do is they'll be creating a wait list of other individuals who might want to fly the race. Because there's always about, I would say, roughly a 10% dropout as time comes close for the actual race itself. So things may open up a little bit. But again, the limit is 55, and so they'll close registration on the 1st of April. After that, you'll want to get your papers in order. So that means your own papers, your racer documents in terms of your logbooks, your certification, your medical, your BFR, that sort of thing, and then the plane docs, so your logbooks for the airplane, including things like 337s and any modifications that have been done to the plane. So you'll want to become familiar with the logbooks for your plane, and those need to be in order by the 1st of May. You'll need to fly a handicap flight, so the pilot of the plane will need to fly a handicap flight. It doesn't need to be the whole team needs to be there, but the weight will be adjusted to accommodate the racers. But the pilot of the plane will need to be there to meet with a handicap pilot to fly that handicap flight. And that'll need to be done before May 15th. And then I recommend that, before the 1st of June, you want to confirm that everything's in order, that your team papers are in order, your plane is in order, and you're ready to fly to the start. And then lastly on that checklist is arrive at the Air Race Classic start before noon on June 19th. And my rule of thumb is that June 19th date, I think, is a Friday. My rule of thumb is I try to get to the start about 2 days early, and anybody who knows me knows I'm a last-minute person. So if I'm getting to the start early, there's got to be a reason for it. For me, I like to be at the start early because basically it allows us to have a much more enjoyable start weekend. And we get to sort of visit the town we're in for a couple of days before we have to buckle down and start attending the seminars in preparation for the race. So, and I think this is probably my last slide. It shows, I think the last route that I haven't yet shown is the 2013 route from Pasco, Washington to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Next to that on the right-hand side is just a great picture of a friend of mine, Sue Jones. We met in Cheyenne on the way out to the start in 2013, and we flew our planes in tandem out to the start. And that's just a shot that somebody got of her getting, opening the door of her plane in Pasco, and I think it really captures, that sort of just excitement and pleasure to do this every year. And then lastly, the other picture is of Helen and Marge, who were #1 in 2013 for that race. And the thing that's special about that is the start of that race from Pasco to Mountain Home, Idaho got delayed because of weather, and there were a number of racers who were stuck overnight and lost either one night or 2 nights before they could even really start the race in Mountain Home because of weather. And if I'm not mistaken, Helen and Marge were waylaid for a night, so they actually had one less day to fly this race, and yet they still came in #1. And that captures how you can win this race, through a lot of different ways. And just in summary, for me, the Air Race Classic it's like 8 to 12 days of fly camp. It's a lot of flying, a lot of hangar talking, education sharing, and just celebration. And just a lot of fun, no matter how challenging the route can be. And I think that's it. So if you, I hope to see some of you, all of you in June, either at the start, the terminus, somewhere in between. Thank you. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you think of questions after we close the seminar, the webinar, visit the frequently asked questions page on the Air Race Classic website, and/or you can contact us at that email, info@airraceclassic.org. And I think that's it. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Minnetta. And also a reminder that this will be on the 99's website, so if you missed this, and I know there were a few of you who signed on late and missed the beginning, but if you missed this and would like to hear the whole webinar again, go to www.99s.org and we will have that up, and it will be just like you saw it here in the webinar. Thanks to all of you for attending, and thank you, Minnetta. Great job.
Yeah, we have some questions.
I've been answering questions as we've gone along, and let's see if we have any questions here that I've missed. Oh, here's a question from Tiffany. How much do you expect the air race to cost?
So I would say it kind of depends how you do things. If you're a 2-member team, a 3-member team, but I typically fly. I've never flown with 3 people, so it's always been the 2 of us. And my best estimate is that it probably costs in the neighborhood of around $3,000 a piece. Is about what I've paid, maybe a little less on occasion, but that's probably a pretty accurate estimate for cost in terms of registering for the race, start and terminus, events, fuel, airplane fuel, and hotels and meals. Some of how you do that, I mean, I've been with teams where we, for the most part, I share a hotel room with my teammate, but I have flown a race or 2 where we didn't share the room. We had separate rooms, so that adds to cost that way. But I think $3,000 is a pretty good estimate.
Sophie asks, how much does the registration cost? How much is it to register?
So they're doing something new this year. It used to be, so the way it has been up until this year is racers would pay for the race registration, and then they would have to pay a start registration for the events on that weekend before the race, and a terminus registration for the events following the race. This year, what they're doing is we are actually charging one fee that will cover everything. So that is, I believe, going to be $590, and that will be for the race registration, start, and terminus fee. So.
Thank you, Minnetta. Jan asks, how are the accommodations handled? You may have addressed this, but I'll just pass this on. How are the accommodations handled?
Those are left up to the teams. Basically, the route division of the Air Race Classic will put together kind of a list of hotels in the area. With the internet now, we think most of the racers kind of do a little bit of investigation on their own. But it's basically the teams, there's a designated hotel for the start and terminus, but the race route itself, the teams will make their own room reservations. And what some teams do is that they basically make reservations for all along the route so that everything is covered. And then they have to remember to cancel reservations if they choose not to spend a night in a particular city, because you never know where you're going to be each night. It's going to be driven by the weather and how your aircraft is performing, and so you're never quite sure what stops you're going to be at overnight. The first year I flew the race, we started to make reservations ahead of time, and then we found ourselves in the air and not ready to, and where we needed to cancel a reservation. So now my approach to this is, my personal approach is I just make the reservations for the hotel when I get to a place and decide I'm going to stay there. And so far, after 6 years of doing that, I've never been at a stop where I didn't have a hotel room option available. So, my personal recommendation is just make the reservations when you get to the town you're going to be at for the night.
Thank you, Minnetta. Here's a question from Nancy. She asks, where does the handicap flight take place? If it's at the start, is there a way to do the handicap flight closer to the race date? I'm from the West Coast and would be flying across the country to the start.
Yeah, so they no longer do handicap flights at the start of the race. So you'll notice the deadline for the handicap flights I think was May 15th. So we've been building sort of networks of handicap pilots who basically they've been instructed or they have the instructions on how to fly the handicap flights. And so the handicap team, the team that organizes this for the air race, they work individually with each team to try to put them in touch with a pilot and get everything set up for you to fly the handicap flight near your hometown. So you should be able to get that done before the race, well before the race, and somewhere close to where you live.
Thank you. Sophie has a question. She wants to know, is it mandatory to arrive on June 19th, or can we arrive on the 20th or 21st?
No, that deadline that I gave of June 19th at noon, that is when all the racers must have landed and have been checked in with their credentials. So that is the deadline. If you come in after that, you would not be able to race. After that date, so on the June 20th, that's when all of the seminars and preparation for the race really starts to take place. You need to get there by that 19th at noon so that your credentials are all checked in, your airplane's going to be inspected, and all of that can be done in good order. And again, after that date, that's when the race teams are all the racers are going to be busy attending mandatory seminars and workshops, getting prepared for the race itself.
Thank you. Now here's a question we all want to know. How do you beat your handicap?
Basically, you're looking for tailwinds, and so you're looking, you're talking to somebody who's not been in the top 10 of the racers, so I don't know all the real secrets to racing, but beating your handicap, you're looking for, flying where you've got tailwinds to push you along faster than your handicap speed would be. You want to make decisions. We've had stops down in Texas where literally it's over 100 degrees, and I remember stepping out of the plane on the tarmac and having some of the tar stick to my shoe. So when it's real hot like that, your plane's not going to be performing at its maximum efficiency, and so sometimes the racers will make a decision, even though the weather's good, they're not going to fly, beyond the morning because it's just too hot. The plane's not going to fly very fast. So those are a couple of examples of things you're looking to do. And again, you're looking for the winds, so you're looking at the winds aloft, and you have to make a decision. If the winds are better higher, are you going to gain enough time to get up to those higher winds? In terms of what it costs you to make the climb versus flying lower. So those are a few examples of things that people consider.
Okay, thank you. Here's someone who would like to know, do those 55 slots go by fast? She's basically asking if she needs to make sure to register early on January 2nd to guarantee her spot.
Hard to know. There's usually a lot of activity in the first week or so, first few weeks that the registration's open. It's kind of a flurry of activity with people racing. I've heard informally, the rumors are that the field is going to fill this year, that there are a lot of people interested in racing this route. So, I guess I would encourage people to definitely follow the registrations. Once, if you go to the Air Race Class website, you'll be able to look to see what teams are registering. They will be listed out on the internet, on the Aries Classic webpage. So you can get an idea of how many teams have registered. But I would definitely, you don't have to run out there on the, 2nd of January to register. They're not going to go that quickly, but they could fill up in that first month. So I definitely watch for that.
Thank you. I know for us in 2012, it was filled by the end of February. But last year it's open a little bit longer, so it just kind of depends.
Yeah, it varies from year to year. So I think it's a fair thing to say it's not going to close out in the first month. Because I'd probably be surprised if it closed out that fast. But I mean, you can go to the website and kind of see the teams that are flying. We do put out 2 publications electronically. So if you're interested, when you get your racer kit, which you can get within the next week or so, one of the things when you put your email in, you'll be eligible to receive at no cost what we call the e-flyby. And it's just kind of a newsletter, and it'll come out about once a month, and it'll sort of keep people abreast of kind of what's happening with the race and give you some information as you go along.
Okay.
And then once you register for the race, you'll receive another e-newsletter that's really tailored for racers and for volunteers also. It's called e-racer, and that'll start coming out that starts coming out usually once the race field is pretty set, so probably not until March or April for e-racer.
Okay, and here's a question that's, do you have to have your IFC certificate when you register, or as long as you have it for the race?
IFC.
I'm not sure what that is, unless that's an instrument rating, perhaps?
Yeah.
This is a person from Canada who's sending this question in.
Right. Yeah, IFR she means. Yeah, so you're not required to have an instrument rating well, it depends. So if you're going to be, or let's put it this way, one person on the team, either the pilot or the co-pilot, must have 500 hours of PIC time. And that can be just without the instrument rating. But then if you do not have 500 hours, if one of those, either the pilot or the co-pilot, does not have 500 hours, then one person must have a current instrument rating. And you would need that to register as a team, I believe. You definitely would have to have it when you showed up for the race. That's when you will present your credentials for verification at the race. So again, the instrument rating is not required, but either the co-pilot or the pilot has to have 500 hours or the instrument rating. And then once one of those person meets those criteria, then the other person of the 2-member team just has to be a private pilot with a current medical and current BFR, biennial flight review.
Okay, and it looks like that's the end of our questions for this evening. And thank you again, Minnetta. And as she said, if you have more questions, you can contact her at info@ariesclassic.org. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening, and I hope you have a good rest of the evening. Thank you.